The scene was all soft light and familiar laughter, the kind of Friday night family dinner Mom prided herself on. Then, my sister Leighton stood up so abruptly her chair screeched. Her scream wasn't one of pain, but of perfect, theatrical accusation. "You stole it." Her finger, sharp as a blade, pointed directly at me. "You took my necklace." The room died. The clatter of cutlery ceased. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad rose, his face a mask of such immediate, profound disgust it stole my breath. He didn't ask. He didn't question. He simply pronounced my exile. "Get out. Now." Period. For words. That was all it took. No inquiry, no defense, just a verdict of guilt served cold before dessert could even be tasted. Betrayal, I learned, smells like roasted thyme and beeswax candles. That night, I packed a single suitcase to the soundtrack of their hushed, furious debate about the disgrace I'd supposedly brought upon them. Leighton presided over my expulsion from the hallway, a silent, victorious sentinel. I refused to let a single tear fall in their presence. I would not give them that. 5 years. That's how long the lie held. The truth emerged only last week, mundane and absurd. The necklace, a delicate gold chain with a ruby pendant, had slipped behind a heavy hall cabinet during the chaos of that evening. A plumber, rerouting pipes, found it nestled in dust and shadow. Now, they're reaching out. They want to talk. They want me to come back. But the person they exiled no longer exists. I've built a life from the ashes of their dismissal, and I am fiercely protective of it. I don't know if there's room for them or if I even want to make any. Looking back, I see the cracks in our foundation were always there. Leighton never loved me, not in any real sense. Her love was a conditional performance. She tolerated me, offered convenient smiles that never reached her eyes. Beneath the surface, a quiet rivalry churned, a competition I never entered but was forced to lose. Leighton was our family's masterpiece, the golden child. Every photograph captured her flawless smile, her impeccable posture. I was the blurry afterthought at the edge of the frame, the smudge in the corner, forever a background character in the brilliant narrative of her life. My parents, I believe, didn't consciously choose a favorite. But their actions drew a clear map. Their applause was loudest for Leighton's piano recitals. Her certificates were framed and displayed, mine were filed away in a drawer. At the dinner table, the conversation orbited her achievements, her friends, her future. My own dreams were never solicited. I'm not sure they believed I harbored any. I tried anyway. I offered to help her study, she'd roll her eyes. I baked cupcakes for her birthday. She discarded them with a casual cruelty. She was never blatantly mean, no shoves or shouted insults. Her specialty was a subtler violence, the art of making me feel invisible, a ghost in my own home. When my acceptance to art school arrived, Dad glanced at the letter and said, "Cute." When Leighton secured a legal internship, they hosted a celebratory dinner. The disparity was so glaring even my grandparents noticed. Once, Grandpa pulled me aside, his gnarled hand on my shoulder. "You've got a fire, Belle," he whispered. "Don't let them put it out." Period. That moment was a lifeline, a rare instance of being seen for myself, not as a dim reflection of Leighton. She resented my bond with him bitterly. When he began gifting me tokens, his old sketchbook, Grandma's favorite pendant, her smile would tighten into something brittle and sharp. "He only does it because he pities you," she hissed once. I never replied. I mistook my silence for keeping the peace. I was wrong. My silence was just the kindling she needed. The necklace wasn't just jewelry, it was a piece of my soul. Grandma's ruby pendant on a fragile gold chain. Grandpa had pressed it into my palm a year before he died, his eyes watery but clear. For the dreamer, he'd said. Its value was measured in memory, not carats. Leighton coveted it with a cold, furious hunger. And, because she couldn't possess it, she decided to destroy my claim to it. Permanently. I see it now. That dinner was her carefully staged finale. A play she'd been scripting for years, where I was cast as the villain, and my family, an eager, unquestioning audience. It was a Friday. Mom had deployed the good china and the cloth napkins with the embroidered edges. A special occasion. Leighton was home from grad school, her latest scholarship requiring a fanfare. I attended out of numb duty. Show up. Smile. Be invisible. That was my ingrained role. The house swelled with relatives and family friends, even our perpetually absent cousin Jace. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, presenting wine, arranging silverware, forcing a compliment about Leighton's dress. Her answering smirk was a dismissive flick of a queen to a scullery maid. I focused on the horizon of the evening. Eat, then escape. Dinner unfolded in the usual key. Laughter like tinkling glass. Dad's toast to Leighton's relentless brilliance and the bright future she so richly deserves. I dissolved into the background, seeking solace in the creamy blandness of mashed potatoes. Then, the performance began. Just as the pecan pie was served, Leighton gasped, a perfectly timed hand flying to her bare throat. My necklace. It's gone. A collective freeze. All eyes riveted on her. My blood turned to ice. The gold chain with Grandma's ruby, she cried, her voice a masterpiece of trembling distress. My necklace. The one she'd been borrowing for months, refusing to return, casually calling it hers in front of others. I left it right on the hallway table before we sat down, she wailed. And now it's vanished. My heart hammered a frantic drumbeat against my ribs, drowning out all other sound. I knew. I knew before her gaze, cool and calculating, swept the table and landed on me. Belle was the only one in the hallway before dinner, she announced, her tone now chillingly flat. The air left the room. A nervous titter from an uncle died instantly. She's always been jealous of me, Leighton continued, her eyes locking onto mine. Ever since Grandpa gave it to her. He gave it to me, I managed, the words barely a whisper. She ignored me, speaking now to the jury of our family. She's probably been waiting to sell it. Things haven't exactly been going her way lately, have they? The cruel implication hung in the fragrant air. Then, Mom's voice, thin and strained. Belle? Did you take it? I looked at her. In her face, I saw genuine confusion, but beneath it, a horrifying readiness, a soil already tilled for the seed of my guilt. No, I said, my voice gaining strength. I did not. Turn out your bag. Dad's command was a gavel strike. I surveyed the faces around the table, a gallery of shock, morbid curiosity, and piteous glances. My hands trembled as I placed my bag on the linen, unzipped it, and emptied its contents. The mundane spill of my life: phone, wallet, lip balm, keys. No ruby pendant. Its absence was proof of nothing, but it was all the proof they needed. The trial was over. Even if you hid it somewhere else, Leighton said, her voice dripping with false sorrow, you know what you did. I pushed my chair back, the legs screeching against the floor. You're lying. And you know you are. Dad's face transformed into something carved from winter stone. Get out. The words were so absurd, I laughed. I'm sorry. Get out of this house. You cannot be serious. Pack your things. And leave. Tonight. My eyes flew to Mom. She studied her napkin, folded neatly in her lap. She did not look up. She did not speak. No one did. In that profound, complicit silence, I left the dining room, the table, my family. I walked out of the light and into the cool, dark hall, the portrait of a thief in a play where everyone else had known their lines perfectly. I walked out without my coat. There were no goodbyes. Inside me, a hollow space opened up, a perfect negative imprint of the necklace they had torn away. That first night, the world was a vast, uncaring vacuum. No destination. No plan. No safe harbor. Just me, a single bag of hastily gathered belongings, and a raw, pounding agony in my chest, a new, wounded organ dedicated solely to the beat of betrayal. The first 48 hours were spent in a motel that charged by the week. The air stung with chlorine and damp, but it held no accusations. The silence there was brittle and cold, but it was truthful. It asked nothing of me. On the third day, I called Zoe. Our friendship had lapsed into the quiet chaos of separate lives, but she answered on the first ring. I didn't have to explain. She simply said, "Text me the address. I'll be there in 10. That was the true beginning. My life didn't restart with a triumph or a certificate. It began on a friend's sofa, with a worn fleece blanket draped over my shoulders and the only words that mattered: stay as long as you need. Her couch became my sanctuary. Her cat, a fluffy gray creature named Kexica, deemed me worthy of nightly companionship, a warm, purring testament that I was still recognizable as a human being. From my family, radio silence. Not a phone call, not a probing text. It was a complete, surgical erasure. I was wiped from the record, like a mistake in a ledger. For 5 years, I watched the annual parade of birthdays and holidays through the distant, polished window of social media. There was Leighton, radiant at every holiday table, my empty chair now occupied by an aunt, a cousin, a family friend. They curated a seamless narrative of wholeness, as if my existence had been a temporary, regrettable glitch. I survived. I waitressed until my feet ached, walked spoiled dogs, filed papers in fluorescent-lit offices, and one endless summer, scrubbed mildew from the walls of vacation cabins. I didn't complain. There was no audience for my grief. My hurt had to be quiet, a private fuel. Slowly, a path emerged. Design. Interiors. It started as a secret language of colors and textures I spoke online, a visual diary of spaces that felt like peace. To my shock, people responded. "Do you take clients?" they asked. My answer, fueled by equal parts terror and necessity, was always yes. I was an unlicensed architect building a career from the ground up. Desperation was my ruthless but effective tutor. I scraped together a portfolio, rented a closet-sized studio, and offered my eyes to strangers over video calls. Each small project was a brick laid in a new foundation. I built it alone, without references, without a safety net, without ever hearing the word sorry. Yet, no success could fully eclipse the memory of that dining room. What haunted me wasn't the brutality of the accusation, but the chilling ease of my dismissal. The way the silence had settled so completely, so comfortably, after my father's decree. It felt less like a shock and more like a consensus they'd silently reached long before. For years, I tortured myself, replaying the scene, searching for the moment I could have fought harder, wept more convincingly, made them see. But the revelation, when it finally came, was a tectonic shift. I had not failed them. The failure was entirely, devastatingly theirs. They failed in their most basic duties, to protect, to inquire, to believe in their own child. They chose the simpler story over the complex truth. Once that clarity took root, there was no path back to who I had been. The door they slammed shut didn't just lock me out, it sealed off the girl who lived on the other side. I was now someone else, forged in the honest silence of a friend's apartment and the demanding glare of a computer screen, learning to trust my own vision above all. Healing was not an event. There was no sunrise that washed away the feeling of being a discarded daughter. The mending happened in the mundane, in the scent of primer and the blue glow of a laptop screen at 2 a.m., where I absorbed the science of complementary colors. In those quiet, weary hours, a fragile new self began to knit together. It all crystallized with one project. A little bakery, its walls the color of tired buttercream. Wanted a fresh start. Zoe, my unwavering believer, put my name forward. I was paralyzed. I had no degree, no formal right to this work, only a gut feeling for what a space could be. But I heard my own voice, steady and clear, say yes. For 2 weeks, the bakery was my universe. I scraped grout, sanded shelves until my arms ached, and on the back wall, I painted a sprawling mural of lavender stems and honey jars. It wasn't just paint, it was an act of faith. When the owner, Deborah, walked in for the final reveal, she didn't speak at first. Then, silent tears tracked through the flour dust on her cheeks. It's what I saw in my dreams," she whispered. "You saw it too." In that moment, the axis of my life shifted. I was no longer a refugee merely surviving. I was a creator. I could translate feeling into form. One yes led to another. A website followed, then a glowing snippet in the local arts section, then an inquiry from a boutique hotel manager. "Would you be willing to consult for us?" The question was a door, and my answer was immediate. Yes. Always yes. My family had deleted me from their story, but the wider world was now reading me and citing me on my own terms. 10 months later, I traded Zoe's generous couch for a small loft perched above a florist's shop. It was imperfect. The roof sang a steady drip-drip during spring rains, and the stairs groaned. But the light was a generous, south-facing flood, perfect for the fiddle-leaf fig I named Fergus, and the rent didn't break me. I built a sanctuary. Linen curtains, walls in warm, earthen hues, a corkboard thick with fabric samples and client notes. In the center, a single, tiny relic, a photo of Grandpa and me on his porch, holding up matching sweaty glasses of lemonade, squinting into the sun. It was the only artifact I allowed from the before. My new life had its own vocabulary, and family was a word I rarely conjugated. To friends, I offered the simple, closed parenthesis, "We're not close." It was a truth that politely ended the discussion. They were kind, they didn't probe, though sometimes I saw a flicker of understanding when my tone flattened at mentions of parents or siblings. The old wound was a quiet tenant. It ached dully when a colleague gushed over a care package from her mom, or when a wedding invitation arrived pointedly addressed to Ms. Bell Carson, no guest, no trace of a clan. Holidays were the hardest, haunted by sensory ghosts. The sage and onion scent of a stuffing I'd never taste again, the phantom cadence of Dad's corny punchlines, the particular, performative trill of Leighton's laugh that used to command any room. But I learned not to let the memories drown me. Instead, I gave them a controlled space. I translated the longing for warmth into the rich ochre of an accent wall. The coldness of that final dinner became the clean, deliberate lines of a minimalist shelf. I alchemized the old pain into texture, light, and harmony. I survived by building. I rebuilt by creating. They had the power to exile me from their home, but in response, I architected an entire world. And within its walls, for the very first time, I was not just present. I was home. A Tuesday. An ordinary morning, coffee steaming beside my laptop. Then, the past landed in my inbox with the subtlety of a grenade. The subject line was a command: "We need to talk." Urgent. Period. The sender: Mom. I stared at the name. 5 years of absolute, unbroken silence stretched between that subject line and me. No birthday wishes, no perfunctory holiday forwards, certainly no apologies. Just void. I opened it. The message was brutally succinct. One line. "We found the necklace. Please call us. Mom." Period. I read it. Then read it again. The necklace. Those 2 words unlocked a vault of memory, the cold weight of the ruby against my skin, the heat of accusation, the slam of a door. The object that had shattered my life and made me a phantom in my own lineage. I did not call. My first reaction was a laugh, a barren, crackling sound that echoed in my quiet loft and startled even me. Then came the tears, not of sorrow or longing, but of sheer seismic release. Some deep, fossilized layer of me, a stratum I thought had turned to stone, fissured under the pressure of their 12-word email. The next day, my phone vibrated with an unknown number I somehow knew. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. Hours later, fortified by a bitter cup of tea, I listened. His voice was unfamiliar, frayed, older, stripped of its former certainty. Bell. It was behind the cabinet. The plumber found it during the renovation. In the far corner. We were wrong. Please. Can we talk? Wrong. The word was so small, so utterly inadequate. It was a teaspoon trying to bail out a sunken ship. They weren't wrong. They were the authors of a cataclysm. They were the jury, judge, and executioners who acted on a lie. I didn't reply. I needed motion. I drove to the lake, to the trail where I used to walk with a sketchbook, seeking patterns in nature when the world of people made no sense. The winter air was a slap of clarity. With each crunch of frost underfoot, I tallied the cost. 5 birthdays spent building my own traditions, 5 Christmases wrapped in the quiet solidarity of chosen friends. I had constructed a person and a profession from rubble. I had sat in a therapist's chair and learned to name the betrayal. I had held on. And now, because a piece of metal had been discovered in the dust, They wanted an audience. Their messages held no apology, only a factual update. We found the necklace. As if informing me of a lost set of keys. As if the aftermath was a minor plot hole to be corrected, not a life that had to be rebuilt from the foundation up. Yet, curiosity is a stubborn parasite. It fed on the questions, what did they want from this? Was it shame finally breaking through? Or merely a selfish desire to reassemble the facade of a complete family picture to quiet a nagging conscience? That evening, I sat before a blank screen. The cursor blinked, a tiny, impatient heartbeat. I drafted sentences full of venom, then others dripping with a coldness I didn't feel. I deleted them all. They were performances. Finally, on the third attempt, I settled on the only unvarnished truth I possessed. I typed, I received your messages. I need time to think. Period. I hit send before I could reconsider. The message was a boundary, a drawbridge pulled up. It felt like a monumental act of containment. And part of me believed that even this small acknowledgement was a generosity they had long ago forfeited. The agreed-upon location was their house. My agreement was a mystery, even to me. Perhaps I needed to stand in the epicenter of the earthquake to see if the cracks were still raw. Or maybe, down deep, I was a foolish child again, hoping to hear a single, unadorned word. Sorry. Spoken plainly. Not implied, not couched in pity, but real. The porch had shrunk. The doorbell, once brass bright, was now a tarnished, dented thing. I hovered, hands suspended, before committing to the press. The door swung inward too fast, as if someone had been waiting just on the other side. Mom. Time had etched itself into her face, leaching the color from her hair to a steely gray. Her eyes were pink and watery. Hi, sweetie, she breathed, the old endearment sounding foreign. I offered no greeting in return. The air inside was a familiar blend of lemon-scented polish and a new, sharp note, dread. Dad was stationed on the living room sofa, his arms folded tightly over his chest like a man braced for sentencing. Leighton was a statue by the fireplace, mirroring his posture, her eyes drilling a hole into the hardwood floor. We migrated to the stage of my betrayal, the dining table. I took my old seat. The irony was a physical weight. The silence was thick, charged. Finally, Dad spoke. We owe you an apology, Belle. I let the statement hang unanswered. The necklace, he continued, his voice grinding like unoiled gears. It was behind the hall cabinet. Must have slipped off the edge when Leighton put it there that night. I raised an eyebrow, my voice dangerously quiet. That night? You mean the night you threw me out like yesterday's garbage? His gaze dropped. Mom's hand, fluttering and tentative, reached across the table for mine. I withdrew mine to my lap. You didn't ask a single question, I said, looking at her. You never doubted. You just accepted her story. Leighton's arms unfolded, her hands falling limp. I truly believed you'd taken it, she whispered, a fragile plea. I was so sure. I cut her off. You don't even know why. You just needed it to be me. My voice hardened. You've always coveted what wasn't yours. And if you couldn't possess it, you'd rather see it destroyed than in my hands. Tears sprang to her eyes, but they sparked with a different fire now. I was jealous. Grandpa loved you more. He saw you. I felt invisible. A disbelieving laugh escaped me. Invisible? You. The word was a weapon. You were the sun, Leighton. The golden child. I was the background shadow, forever dimmed by your shine. Don't you dare rewrite history. Dad released a heavy, world-weary sigh. We made mistakes. No, I stated, my calm absolute. A mistake is adding salt instead of sugar. What you did was a choice. A conscious, cruel, unanimous choice to believe the worst of me. And now you want forgiveness? Like it's a trinket to be exchanged for this coffee and this polished table. Mom wiped at her cheeks. We miss you. The words, meant to be a bomb, felt like an accusation. I miss the people I thought you were, I corrected her. The parents I believed would protect me. I'm not sure I miss the people you actually are. They tumbled over each other then. More apologies. Pleas for a second chance. Confessions that my room was untouched. That holidays were hollow. That pride and shame had built a wall of silence. Their words may have been true, but truth is not an eraser. It doesn't undo consequences. I pushed my chair back, the sound definitive. I didn't come for closure or a reunion. I came to bear witness. The girl you banished from this table? She didn't make it. She died that night from your neglect. I walked to the foyer, to the door that had once expelled me. I paused, my hand on the knob. I'm not saying forgiveness is impossible, I said, without turning. But if it ever comes, understand this. It won't be to give you peace. It will only ever be to claim my own. The cold outside was a shock, clean and bracing. It carried the scent of frozen earth and freedom. The drive home was a silent pilgrimage. No music, no voices, just the rhythmic whisper of the road and the dense, quiet mass of everything I had left unspoken, still lodged beneath my ribs. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the surge of victory. Instead, a profound hollowing out. It was as if I'd finally dared to open a long-buried keepsake box, only to find the contents had long since disintegrated into nothing but fine ash and an absolute, deafening quiet. Back in my loft, my creation, my proof, I lit the lavender candle from Zoe. Its gentle scent began to displace the ghost of lemon polish. Then I opened the journal, the one my therapist called the container for the uncontainable. My pen met the paper. They said the words. Apology. Regret. But are they real? Is there sorrow for the pain they caused, or merely for the discomfort of facing their own failure? Where was this ache when I was a ghost sleeping on a borrowed couch? Where were these tears during the Christmas I celebrated with the hum of industrial dryers for company? Writing it raw, without buffing the edges for their consumption, was its own kind of liberation. The next day, in the safe, neutral space of my therapist's office, I unpacked it all. The theatricality of the dining table stage. The shocking vulnerability in Leighton's jealous confession. The heartbreaking attempt from Mom to bridge 5 years with a touch. And my own crucial revelation, the absence of any desire to offer physical comfort. It wasn't malice, it was sovereignty. My embraces were no longer default family currency. They were mine to bestow. My therapist listened, then offered the clearest wisdom yet. You do not owe them a neat conclusion, Belle. You owe yourself protection. I carried those words home like a shield. That evening, I drafted a list. Not of grievances, but of borders. Boundaries. 1. Communication, text-based, initiated by me. Weekly check-ins, if that. 2. No unannounced visits. Ever. 3. No family gatherings or holidays. Indefinitely. 4. Leighton is to have no direct contact. Any communication goes through parents. 5. Forgiveness is not a demand or a deadline. It is a possibility, and its timeline is mine alone. I sent the list to my parents. Mom's reply was swift. We understand. We will respect the space you need. Thank you for this chance. It wasn't warmth, but it was respect. For now, that was the necessary foundation. Life in my own world continued. I secured new clients, my confidence growing. I embraced a signature palette, stormy blue and burnished gold, colors of depth and resilience. The flinch in my spine when Mom's name appeared on my phone gradually faded. One Sunday, I even answered. We spoke of practical, present things, the blight on her tomato plants, the forecast for rain. It was a conversation stripped of history, and in its blandness, there was a fragile peace. Leighton sent one long, tumultuous email after the meeting. A torrent of memories and realizations, culminating in a line like, I mistook my jealousy for your fault. I hated you because I couldn't stand myself. I read it once, then archived it. I didn't reply. My silence was not punishment, but preservation. I am in the careful, ongoing process of healing my own fractures. I cannot yet be the custodian of her remorse. Her guilt is a weight she will have to carry on her own for a while longer. My hands are full building something new. The ache still visits sometimes. Not for them, but for her, that younger, yearning version of myself who lived in the shadow of comparison, who stretched and strained and was always deemed not quite. The daughter who was never the first choice. But now, the pain is just a passing weather system. It is no longer the climate of my life. My life now has topography. It is a mosaic where the dark tiles of grief are essential to the pattern, held in balance by the bright pieces of growth and the soft, forgiving grout of grace. And I am beginning, tentatively, to appreciate the whole composition, to like its shape. Spring tiptoed in. A haze of tender greens softened the trees outside my window, and the morning light fell in wide, generous bands, like a silent benediction. 2 months have slid by since the confrontation, since the truth was aired in that tense dining room. Forgiveness remains a distant country, but I am still here. Firmly. Living in the present tense, rebuilding in the present tense. Last week I moved. Not as an escape, but as a declaration. I chose a space unhaunted by anyone's history but my own. The new apartment has airy ceilings, floors of warm oak that gleam, and a dedicated nook just for reading, where my sketchbooks and a collection of herbal teas reside. It is mine. A sanctuary authored entirely by me. Mom's texts are sporadic, a photo of her first ripe tomato, a scanned recipe card for our great-grandmother's shortbread. They are small, non-invasive bridges. I cross them sometimes, and sometimes I don't. The choice is mine, and that is everything. Last Sunday, an email from Dad arrived. No subject, no body text. Just a hyperlink to a business article about a design firm's expansion. No context, no pressure. Yet, I felt my lips curve. It was a gesture from an old language, a relic of the father who once silently acknowledged my world by leaving relevant clippings outside my bedroom door. It wasn't an apology, but it was a form of seeing. Leighton's silence persists. She is a phantom limb in the story. And perhaps that is the most honest outcome. Not all rifts are meant to be sutured. Some chasms must simply be acknowledged, their vast, quiet space respected. I cannot map the future for their family or for my relationship to it. But my own coordinates are now clear. I am no longer the girl who was expelled. I am no longer the sister who was erased. I am no longer the daughter passed over. I am Belle Carson, the woman who crafted a compass from her own broken pieces and navigated out of the wilderness. Who learned that no is a complete sentence. Who understands that healing is not a dramatic crescendo but a quiet, persistent practice, a series of small, daily choices that, over time, send down roots and eventually, stubbornly, bloom. Forgiveness may arrive one day. Not as a trophy they have earned, but as a release I might need for my own journey. And if that day never dawns, I will still be whole. Because every single thing I was convinced I had lost in that house, my value, my voice, my sense of belonging, I have recovered within myself. I have built an inner home of formidable strength. And that is a territory no one can ever evoke. The end.